Welcome back to LuvStrong.
And this episode we're going to call I Put That on My Mama or Daddy. What it's about is the tendency of nowadays to be able to assign blame to your parents or anything but your ass.
Yeah, the lack of accountability.
Yeah,
It
so
seems very prevalent
yeah,
nowadays.
it's one of these things where if I trace back some kind of trauma and I tell you that my mom or my dad started this, I put that on my mama, or you could say I put that on my daddy too. It really explains the way that nowadays you can assign blame to your parents or anything but you.
Yeah, it's a lot of lack of accountability nowadays. It's very prevalent in society within people we know, and it's just we want to kind of talk about that today in terms of really stop using excuses to validate things in your life that you need to work on.
Yeah, it's become something that it's pretty much a scapegoat. I know with myself, my brother and I grew up in the same household. We're totally different. So we have to get to a certain point where we don't blame our history and understand that we are who we are. Sometimes the stimulus just exposes who we are. I'll give you an example. Well, like say my father could grow up to be a womanizer, player. And if I grow up to be a womanizer and player, I could say I got that from my daddy, right? Now, I could grow up and be the opposite and assign blame to my dad. I'm the opposite because my dad was this way. So when are we going to accept the fact that it's all on us? It's not about our moms or dads. That might be of a little influence, and that exposes who we truly are. But the problem is we start assigning blame and think that's all the work we have to do. That's the problem because other people, our friends and society accepts, oh, this is why you're the way you are. And
And
it's
it's
all on
okay.
them. Yeah.
And it's okay. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's not okay. It's not supposed to end right there. You need to do the work now. Now that, and to me, I've always looked at it as now that you've acknowledged what the issue is, now that's the first step. Now you need to work on it so that you don't have to keep putting blame on someone else for. Because I mean, think about how many relationships are like that where someone can be like, well, I'm this way because that's how I grew up and that's how I was in my household and that's just what it is.
Yeah.
No, that's not okay.
Yeah, maybe you grew up wrong.
Right. So
Maybe
so
your parents
now
were
your
wrong.
partner or your friend or whoever you're dealing with has to deal with that forever because that's just how you are and that's how you grew up. No, now it's a time. Now you've acknowledged it. Now you have to go, okay, now I need to do some work. Let me see if I can get past this hurdle in my life and become a better person and not have to keep putting blame or using that as an excuse to why I'm the way I am.
Yeah, exactly. When I was on that bullshit, I would use that as a crutch all the time. I tell my sob story about my father and how, like, he grew up. I grew up only 40 minutes from him, but I wouldn't see him, and the way he would treat me and all that kind of stuff. I get all this sympathy from all these people that I wanted sympathy from women, and I, of course, as a man, I played that. I played all that kind of crap. But there's a certain point where you should freaking grow the hell up. So I happened to look at the fact that my father was this slick, good looking. He was a model. He sang. He sang for a gospel singing group. Like they made records, and he was the man about town. He had all these women and all that type of stuff, and that was my hero. But that same hero taught me that you're not completely dressed until you pack your matching pistol to what you're wearing. And so then I was walking around everywhere I went. I was strapped or I had some kind of weapon on me because that's what my hero taught me. Now, when I was younger, I didn't know any better. I got older. Well, I don't have any more excuses. So what's happening is that people are not policing themselves anymore. They're doing as little work as they can because they want to stay in their comfort zone. If that's you, you can recognize it and say, "Hey, maybe I need to stop that." Especially, there's probably people telling you that, but you're not listening because you want to stay the way you are because you have a scapegoat and an excuse. So, yeah, I totally had an excuse, and I used that shit to my benefit for a long time until I had to grow up.
Yeah, I've grown up with a lot of people in my family who, have gone through things of trauma, things in their past, and I see the ones who acknowledge it and move past it, and I see the ones who don't. I see the ones who just will always continue to use that as an excuse for anything in their life. Well, well, you didn't have this in your life, so you wouldn't understand. Well, you didn't grow up this way, so you wouldn't understand. No, I completely understand. But I also understand that you are continuously going to use that as a reason for everything in your life that you feel a need to validate why it is the way it is. And that's just like, and you see that so much now. I mean, you
Yeah.
see it in politics, you see it on TV. I mean, you see it everywhere. It's crazy. Like, you just see how people not take accountability for anything.
Yeah. So yeah, of course, there's legitimate claims of your parent being your first influence. Absolutely. But it's not the end all, beat all, and explanation to everything. It might explain a bit. My mom was a very obedient type of person. She followed the trends and what she was told. As a result, I was the opposite because I didn't like anybody who followed without testing things for themselves. But that was my personality. And my mother's personality only highlighted the fact that I was not that way. And that was something I railed against, right? I, so because of that, I learned who I was. But now imagine if I was the same way as her, then that could be something that influenced me to be that way.
Yeah. I always took examples like as a kid, it to me, whenever I saw someone that was doing something that maybe everybody else did or something that I didn't like, I don't care if it was, everybody smoking, or people are doing this or that. I looked at it as like, that's some way I don't want to be. Like, or if someone in my family acts a certain way, I'm not going to be like, well, that's how they act, so this is what I'm growing up with, so I'm going to be that way too. No, I would completely go the opposite way. I'm like, I don't like that. I don't want to be like that when I get older. I don't want to have that be the reason why I treat people this way, or that's a reason why I say this or say that. Like, to me, it was always the opposite. Like, I never, I always say you're a very balanced person. Mm-hmm. Like, I think that had a lot to do with it. Like, I just would see things that, the way I grew up or different things. And I'm like, I don't want to be that way. And I won't be that way,
In our community, we have to face the truth on several matters. Is that the generations before us grew up with tremendous trauma, and we inherited all of that. So a lot of dysfunction is within our ranks, and to assume that we were brought up in the optimal manner is just ridiculous. Almost everyone is not free from trauma, least of all us. So we have to give our parents a break when we judge them too harshly. So so we just need to understand those sources and understand our own nature to stay within our comfort zone and not to change. Change is hard for people, but it's necessary to get an optimal life. And change your circumstances. It has to come with a bit of pain, and so you should probably be thinking about leaning into that pain to get where you want to go, if that's obviously an obstacle for you.
Yeah. I've always thought there was always two types of people. There's the people who hold on to trauma, kind of refuse to let it go, and like you said, use it as a crutch. And then there's other people who do not want to hold on to that trauma, and they want to do everything they can to get past it, to move forward in life. And you really see that. Like you really can, I can always detect the people who are like one or the other. You know what I mean? Like you said, we all have dealt with trauma. Everyone. Everyone's dealt with some type of trauma. Some have had horrible things such as, you know, maybe they were molested when they were a child, or they were, or, you know, a woman was raped at her job, or, you know, I mean, it's so, somebody was beat up. It's so many things that could lead you to being a certain way in life. But it's how you get past those things that help you grow as a person and help build your relationships, because all those traumas can absolutely enter into a relationship and affect it. I mean, look how many people get into relationships and that might be the source of a lot of their arguments, right? Because it's always is this button heads. Well, I'm this way because of how my parents were. You know, if a man comes from a family where in his household the father was ruling things, or he might have beat on the mother or kind of controlled her, now he can go into his relationship feeling that he can do that too, because that's what his father did. That's his father acted to his mother and treated the kids. But how much bigger are you, and how much of a man will you become to become the complete opposite, to break those chains and become a person who treats your wife well, treat your children strong, you know, is there for your family, opposed to something you might have seen growing up. I mean, that to me, that just makes you such a bigger, stronger person mentally and emotionally.
Yeah, I learned so much of what not to do from my father, my biological father. I don't think we spent 3 whole days under the same roof. He was a player. He prided himself on how many women, the clothes, and all that kind of stuff he had, and cars. And one thing I did learn, and it applies in my relationship greatly, is that he held on to the fact that he might have been correct about why he and my mother didn't make it, because my grandmother really didn't like my father. My grandmother thought he was too slick, and she might have been right about all of that,
she was
right?
right, yeah.
And my grandmother was very country, right? She didn't trust this good-looking 6'5" guy from New York. And my grandmother would always be in my mother's ear not to trust him, and that he was not right for her. Now, my father, I believe, never got over losing my mother because she listened to her mother. And he would tell me over and over about the time that he went to go see my mother and she ended the relationship. That man pined over losing my mom to the day he died. Every single time I was around this man, he talked about that instance. My mother herself talked about how she was wrong for listening to her mother, because when my mom and dad would talk to each other, I would see there was a chemistry that I didn't know who those two people were. My mother became a little girl, and my father he just was over the moon. And I would see this dynamic whenever they'd be in the same room. But my father held on to the pride that he was right about that thing that ended their relationship. And instead of doing something about it, he was relegated to remembering and bringing up that story every freaking year and every time I saw him. And I vowed that I would never let pride keep me from my happiness the way that man let pride keep him from his. That to me was tragedy. And I was not going to have a life like that. So when it came time, when I realized that there's a chemistry I had with Gillian that I experienced, and I might not experience that same chemistry again, I called her up and I put myself, like at her mercy and said, I'm going to do anything not to lose you again. So, yeah, we can learn things from our parents. They can provide good role modelship or bad. But it's ultimately up to us. We can't lay blame on them, but we certainly can learn from them and learn what not to do from them.
Yeah, I mean, I look at the fact that in my family, it's just divorce, 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 divorce. There's like no one in my family that's had like a long lasting relationship. So I never had those examples. I never, like, I would have friends at school that are like, oh, my parents are celebrating their 35th anniversary. And I'm like, wow, that's nice. I've never seen that before, But I did know that deep down inside, I didn't want that, even though those were the examples I saw in my life, I didn't want any type of divorce, And so when Michael and I got together, I was like, I would never foresee that. Like, this is my everything right here. And I'm like, I'm going to be the one to break that chain, I'm like, this is going to be a long lasting forever,
Yeah.
relationship. And I'm going to be the one that our kids can look back and say, that wasn't our parents, like, you know what I mean? Like the examples I saw were it was just a lot of divorce.
Yeah. Well, I'm happy that our 22-year-old says that we're a couple goals.
Yeah.
So that's something I take a great pride in. But the overarching message here is that scapegoating, whether it be your parent or anything else, it's the tendency to reach for something to provide an excuse. That behavior is at the crux of the problem, because the problem is always going to start from within, is that idea of bailing, not accepting blame. And it all connects to doing self-work, being honest, because you have to live with yourself the rest of your life. You have to look in the mirror. You can't fool yourself. So the work sometimes is from within. I think not sometimes, probably the majority of the time.
You always know when you're making excuses in life. You know that. Like you say, you have to look in the mirror every day, and you look at yourself and you know when you're bullshitting yourself, making up excuses, making up reasons why you can't do something or fulfill something or, accomplish something in your life because of an excuse.
And are you searching to get the validation from your friends, and that's all you really want, is them to say, yeah, you're right? They could love you wholeheartedly, but be wrong. They love you, so they're going to tell you what you need to know or what you want to hear.
What you want to hear.
And
yeah.
I don't think that they're doing it on purpose. I think they really believe, and they were going to tell you that, and it's not anything manipulative. They really do think that they're doing the best for you. But it's ultimately up to us. I don't think there's a villain who doesn't have a support group that's telling him that he's doing the right thing.
Yeah, that's true. I think we've seen that.
That's loaded. Yeah. So I just let you think on that for a little bit.
Yeah.
Villains who got all this support.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's
in
nobody
high positions in our country.
Nobody in particular. Nobody in particular.
Nobody in particular. No.
Yeah.
No names needed to be mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I always say,
Yeah.
I'm sure there's people who said Jeffrey Dahmer didn't eat me.
So he's not that bad.
Yeah, yeah, he was nice to me. So I don't think we should give Jeffrey Dahmer credit for the people he didn't eat.
That's that's a hell
Is
of an
that
example.
insensitive? Is that very insensitive? I don't know.
It might be
Yeah, yeah.
to the family members of the victims of Jeffrey Dahmer.
Actually, it's society that is accepting excuses now in a level that they never have. Personally, I was a school teacher when I saw the whole advent of everybody gets a trophy. What was happening is that there was this push for kids' self-esteem, to save on their self-esteem, to have them not experience loss. There's no losers here. Everybody gets a trophy. Everybody wins. And we're seeing the remnants of that now because these children from the 80s and 90s are now adults who can't deal with failure. They lash out, they blame anything but themselves because they weren't allowed to lose.
Yeah.
And that's very dangerous.
It's extremely dangerous. I remember our daughter was taking karate. And I forget one day this mother was sitting next to me and she was mad that her child wasn't getting, going up to another level with the belt color. And I asked her, I said, well, have they really done the work? Are they at the level that they should be to get a promotion? And she was like, well, we've been here long enough. Like she wouldn't really answer my question. And she was just upset. And I'm going to go talk to the head of the karate school. So I swear the next promotion, all of a sudden, her kid is there getting pushed up to the belt level, another promotion. Her child wasn't really doing the work. Her child really
Sucked.
wasn't,
Sucked.
I don't want to say sucked. The kid wasn't at the level to get a promotion. But because that mother went and fussed at the person who owned the school, now their child's getting pushed up. It's teaching the child you don't have to work hard anymore. Like when we were growing up, we had to work hard. We had to work hard for A's. We had to work hard for, good grades and accomplishments in sports. Like we had to work. I was a basketball player. We had to work hard. We didn't get trophies or awards if we didn't put in the work. I mean, my basketball team, we had a college coach for our high school girls. He treated us like a guy's college team. He made us work hard for our accomplishments, and we made it all the way to the top level CIF when he was in place. But then we had other coaches who came on and they, oh, it's okay. Oh, your stomach hurts today. Oh, you have cramps. You can sit out. It's like, no, you want to work hard. That's what's going to make you win in life. And like, it made me so frustrated that this woman complained to get her kid promoted.
Yeah.
It's not teaching them anything. It's like now they think that it's just easy to move up in life without working hard for it.
Yeah, I thought you were about to talk about the kid who, there's that big kid that was fighting our daughter, but our daughter was beating the hell out of him. But the mother was complaining that she was too hard on him.
Yeah.
But my daughter, our daughter was, I said our daughter, yeah. So not just my daughter because she was beating the hell out of somebody in a karate school, and I was concerned at the level that she was putting it to this kid, but that mother complained.
Yeah, it's this world now where parents complain if your kid didn't do this and get a good grade in class. Did your kid work for that grade? You complain if your kid's not pushed to, captain of the team. Did your kid work for that? It's like, and that's where that whole mentality comes in now, that no one likes to lose.
Yeah,
no one likes to take, and they just get this kind of mentality it's weak. It's weak-minded. It's not strong.
Yeah, I said it before. We're making very weak kids, weak adults. I remember I was casting a movie that I was directing, And this movie, there was a lead kid, a college age kid, and I got audition tapes from a lot of actors. And there was this one kid that to me stood out, and he had character. It was like this kid came from something, and I didn't see that from a lot. It was sad that I didn't see this character coming out from very many of the ones that was auditioning. But this one was one of the few videotapes that was sent at the time. It was a taped audition at the time where mostly people were showing up. But it turns out that this kid was from Australia, and there was just such a difference between all of the American kids who auditioned. It was like they hadn't had a tough day in their life. No character building kind of background to them.
Yeah, and that really comes out when that's there, you know.
Yeah, and I think that's just a precursor to what's happening. That there's a lack of character when you lack, or you coddle children and keep them from going through adversity. We had some of the best friendships growing up with people that you had fist fights with. That was something that built character.
Yeah.
And I feel sorry for the young age, because it's very hard for them to seek out that kind of character because it's just not there, and they don't know any better. They may have the trappings of adulthood, but they've basically skipped over a great deal of experience. And these kids, once they are faced with adversity, it hits them very hard because they consider themselves adult because they are adult age, but they just are not tested.
Yeah, it needs to be some type of a reprogramming of how people think nowadays. Like you said, and like I said a while ago, everyone's gone through trauma. There's so many people that have dealt with adversity in their life. It's the way you keep moving upward from that adversity is what makes you the person that you are later in life and able to deal with things a lot better than laying the blame, coming up with excuses all the time. It's now I'm saying a lot. I'm starting to notice it. But it's work. It's work. And I know a lot of our episodes kind of always tend to go back to the self-work you put into yourself. This is kind of the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the work you put in.
It's just identifying the nucleus of the problem, and that's what it is. So it's nothing more than that, I think.
Yeah.
So I mean, again, this one is called. I put that on my mama. The reason is because we have become a society that can assign blame and be patted on the back for it. I believe that has to stop, and it has to stop from within.
Yeah, and I would love for everyone out just to challenge everyone. Like, if there are things that you are dealing with, trauma, adversity in your life, the way you grew up, the way someone treated you, domestic violence, abuse, whatever it is that sits within you and kind of allows you to use it as an excuse and not take accountability for certain things in your life, I challenge you to try to do the self-work. And sometimes, there is nothing wrong. I know there's a lot of people out there that are against therapy and getting treatment for mental health. It is nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with talking to someone and getting help and advice to help put you in a better position for yourself, for your relationships, and for your children and your family.
Yeah, and our parents, our mamas, our daddies, we grew up with a society and a culture that didn't seek out that type of help. So that's one of the things that your mama and daddy may not have done that you have to change. If you have an ear problem if you have an eye problem. What do?
You go to the doctor.
Yes, you go to somebody, an ear, nose,
Nose.
throat,
Exactly.
whatever, ankle, whatever
Right.
problem. Now, if you have a problem within yourself, the way you're thinking, you're having adversity in your thought process and in your stress levels and all that type of stuff, then you need to see somebody who is proficient in those areas. So let's start to change the narrative and seek out and do the obvious thing, that the trauma that you've inherited and the trauma that you live with, there are those who can help you with that.